En passant is a move in chess. It is a special pawn capture, which can only occur immediately after a pawn moves 2 ranks forward from its starting position, and an enemy pawn could have captured it had the pawn moved only 1 square forward. The opponent captures the just moved pawn as it passes through the first square. The resulting position is the same as if the pawn had moved only 1 square forward and the enemy pawn had captured it normally. The en passant capture must be made at the very next turn, or the right to do so is lost. It is the only occasion in chess in which a piece is captured but is not replaced on its square by the capturing piece. Like any other move, if an en passant capture is the only legal move available, it must be made. En passant capture is a common theme in chess compositions. The en passant capture rule was added in the 15th century when the rule that gave pawns an initial double-step move was introduced. It prevents a pawn from using the 2-square advance to pass an adjacent enemy pawn without the risk of being captured. The rule, a pawn on its 5th rank may capture an enemy pawn on an adjacent file that has moved 2 squares in a single move, as if the pawn had moved only 1 square. The conditions are, the capturing pawn must be on its 5th rank. The captured pawn must be on an adjacent file and must have just moved 2 squares in a single move. The capture can only be made on the move immediately after the opposing pawn makes the double-step move. Otherwise the right to capture it en passant is lost. En passant is the only occasion in chess in which the capturing piece does not replace the captured piece on its square. Examples. In the opening, there are some examples of en passant in chess openings. In this line from Petrov's defense, white can capture the pawn on d5 en passant on his 6th move. 1. e4 e5, 2. An f3 n f6, 3. d4 ex d4, 4. e5 n e4, 5. qx d4 d5, 6 ex d6 ep. Another example occurs in the French defense after 1 e4 e6 2 e5, a move once advocated by Wilhelm Steinitz. If black responds with 2. d5, white can capture the pawn en passant with 3 ex d6. Likewise, white can answer to f5 with 3 ex f6 ep. An example is from this game by Steinitz and Bernhard Flissig. 1. e4 e6, 2. e5 d5, 3 ex d6 ep. Unusual examples, black has just moved his pawn from f7 to f5 in this game between Gunnar Gundersen and Albert h4. White could capture the f-pawn en passant with his e-pawn, but instead played 13. h5 plus kh6, 14. nx e6 plus, note that the bishop on c1 affects the check, via a discovered check. 14. kh7 results in 15 qx g7. 14. g5, 15 hx g6 ep. The en passant capture and discovered checks place black in checkmate. The largest known number of en passant captures in one game is 3, shared by 3 games. In none of them were all 3 captures by the same player. The earliest known example is a 1980 game between Alexandra Soren-Siegel and Karl-Heinz Podolny. In chess compositions, en passant captures have often been used as a theme in chess compositions, as they produce striking effects in the opening and closing of lines. In the 1938 composition by Kenneth S. Howard, the key move 1. d4 introduces the threat of 2 d5 plus cx d5 3 bx d5. Black may capture the d4 pawn en passant in either of 2 ways. The capture 1. ex d3 ep shifts the e4 pawn from the e to the d file, preventing an en passant capture after white plays 2. f4. To stop the threatened mate, black may advance to f5, but this allows white to play 3 ex f6 ep. With checkmate due to the decisive opening of the e file. If black plays 1. cx d3 ep, white exploits the newly opened a2 g8 diagonal with 2. qa2 plus d5 3 cx d6 ep. Historical context, allowing the en passant capture, together with the introduction of the 2-square first move for pawns, was one of the last major rule changes in European chess, and occurred between 1200 and 1600. Other relatively recent rule changes were castling, the unlimited range for queens and bishops. Spanish master Raúl Cubed Pez de Seguera gives the rule in his 1561 book Libro de la Invención Liberal y Art del Juego de las Ajedrez, and a change to the rules on pawn promotion. In most places the en passant rule was adopted at the same time as allowing the pawn to move 2 squares on its first move, but it was not universally accepted until the Italian rules were changed in 1880. The motivation for en passant was to prevent the newly added 2-square first move for pawns from allowing a pawn to evade capture by an enemy pawn. Asian chess variants, because of their separation from European chess prior to that period, do not feature any of these moves. Notation: in either algebraic or descriptive chess notation, en passant captures are sometimes denoted by EP or similar, but such notation is not required. In algebraic notation, the move is written as if the captured pawn advanced only 1 square, for example, bxa3 in this example. Threefold repetition in stalemate, the possibility of an en passant capture is relevant to claims of a draw by threefold repetition. 2 positions whose pieces are all on the same squares, with the same player to move, are for this purpose considered different if there was an opportunity to make an en passant capture in the first position, and of course that opportunity no longer exists the second time the same configuration of pieces occurs. In his book on chess organization and rules, international arbiter Kenneth Harkness wrote that it is frequently asked if an en passant capture must be made if it is the only legal move. This point was debated in the 19th century, with some arguing that the right to make an en passant capture is a privilege that one cannot be compelled to exercise. In his 1860 book Chess Praxis, Howard Staunton wrote that the en passant capture is mandatory in that instance. The rules of chess were amended to make this clear. Today, it is settled that the player must make that move. The same is true if an en passant capture is the only move to get out of check. See also, Pawn, Rules of Chess, References, Notes. Bibliography.